There was a time when the Tate Brothers were the talk of the town, especially older brother Andrew Tate. Back then, everybody had quite strong feelings about him. He was either top G or a toxic misogynist. One of my first videos even was street interviews asking people about Andrew Tate. Do you know who Andrew Tate is?
Yeah, I do.
What do you think of him?
I think he's an idiot a lot of the time.
But putting aside all of the hullabaloo and the allegations which may or may not be true, is the message that Andrew Tate was spreading fundamentally good for people? Good for young men who made up the majority of his fans? Was Andrew helping men improve their lives? Or was he really spreading a toxic and misogynistic message? One of the things Andrew became most famous for is his provocative takes on women. When I asked people on the street about what they didn't like about him, this was what came up most often.
In fact, I don't agree with most things he says.
What specific?
His ideas on women and...
But what exactly did Andrew say about women, and how much of it was honest, and how much provocative? Because Andrew Tate was really the first prototype of an internet sensation. He knew very well how to capture people's attention. That's why he became such a big name. But it is important to distinguish when he was being serious and when he spoke in jest. Something that the media often used against him, citing things obviously said as jokes, as if he was serious.
Do you think women are the property of men?
No. The point I was making...
Why have you said they are?
Because I made a religious point. I said that when a man marries a woman, the woman's father walks her down the aisle, and hands her away to the man. Traditionally, this is what it says in the Bible.
In reality, when Andrew was speaking seriously, he rarely made outrageous or groundbreaking claims about women. As he says in the clip, a lot of his views come from the Abrahamic religions. But when he couples these more traditional views with his boisterous personality, that's where a lot of people become upset. He often makes sweeping generalizations and speaks harshly about women. Even if underneath his words lies some truth, it can be difficult to reach for most people. Because his target audience from the start was young boys, and that's why he spoke in this provocative manner that appealed to boisterous boys, but pushed away most other people. One of Andrew's other most famous remarks about women was on body count and age.
The reason 18 and 19-year-olds are more attractive than 25-year-olds is because they've been through less dick.
I'll say this right here on the fucking internet.
I don't give a shit.
People will sit there and go, oh, you can't say that.
Yes, I can.
A 19-year-old is more attractive than a 26-year-old woman, and I'll tell you why. Because that 26-year-old has talked to more guys, been to the club more times, been more places, been fucked and dumped more times, more arguments, more heartbreak, more bullshit, more mess for me to clean up.
I mean, can anybody truthfully deny that 25-year-olds have more trauma than teenagers? Not really, but considering he's a man in his late 30s, that's where his statement becomes much more concerning. On one hand, Andrew Tate appears to champion traditional values and vaguely defend Christian and Islamic theology. But on the other, he made a business out of making girls webcam online. That's how he began making any real money. Whether this was legally or not is another can of worms I won't open now, but this is a man who speaks so critically of women and their promiscuity, yet at the same time himself is a self-proclaimed womanizer. He has and continues to contribute to the problems he is rebuking. And leaving age gaps aside, considering his track record, Andrew saying he would rather date a teenager than a woman in her mid-20s does sound predatory, because he isn't willing to commit or settle down by all accounts. He is a far cry from the traditional man he claims to be. Monogamy carries with it a duty that Andrew loves to eschew. Even if you claim that within Islam polygyny is permitted, Islam never encourages lust. It allows men multiple wives to whom they are expected to commit to and create a family with. Adultery and promiscuity remain the same across religion and culture. Herein lies an issue central to Andrew Tate's character, although he can sometimes be quite profound in what he says. So much of his philosophy is still shallow and surface level. With women, he chases them like Pokemon cards to flaunt them like some sort of trophies. For him, wealth is about getting expensive cars and flying on jets. Andrew never seems to be encouraging us to look inwards, but always to look outwards. For Andrew to think there is nothing more to a great man than an expensive car and a harem of women. Regarding Andrew's views on women, I would argue that he influenced young boys for the worse, because although he might have opened their eyes to some female machinations, he instilled into so many young boys the destructive mindset of running through women as a means to confidence and masculinity, which is a mindset that is already prevalent enough. And Andrew only spread it further. Whether it's women or men engaging in it, promiscuity and adultery damage the very fabric of society. Andrew's message has always focused on young men and masculinity. He was the driving force of the men's self-improvement wave in 2022. And there was good reason for this. From the outside looking in, he seemed to have it all. He had been a kickboxing champion, he was a successful businessman, and he rode in expensive cars with pretty women. All of this definitely lent him some credibility. When Andrew speaks about fitness, he has some good things to say. There was a big push towards a gym for young men that Andrew basically instigated, alongside his endorsement of mental toughness, which helped a lot of young guys that might have never had that guidance.
Your life as a man is going to be terrible the entire time. But I don't think the Bible says you're supposed to be happy all of the time. The Quran certainly doesn't.
Again, there wasn't anything particularly groundbreaking in what he was saying, but as progressive ideology was really at its peak in 2022, this made Andrew a reaction and opposition to this mainstream ideology. Whilst progressivism preached that everyone was beautiful and that men should embrace their femininity, Andrew reinforced for young men the realities of male life, that it is difficult and that anything good you want will take a lot of effort, but you need resilience and discipline to see it through. He also spoke to many men who struggle with women and acknowledged the importance of dating, that it's not some vain pursuit, but a very big motivator for everything that men do. To many guys, he was saying, you're not crazy for wanting a girlfriend, but don't expect it to be easy. Andrew also closely linked masculinity and business, enforcing the idea that a man needs to be well off financially to be high value. Andrew started a big push towards entrepreneurship for young men, a good thing in and of itself, but considering the angle it was coming from, this is what made Andrew's message much shakier. As mentioned before, Andrew's main wealth began from getting girls into online cam work, and then when he exploded in popularity, he began selling his online course, Hustlers University. So for all the talk of being a high-value man, Andrew's business path doesn't feel like one of an honest and hard-working man, but much more like a shady businessman who makes his fortune by exploiting others. People love hating on rich people, complaining that Bezos or Gates have much more money than they should. But most of us have used Amazon or Windows, right? Billions are familiar with the fruits of their labor. They created something that provided immense value for many people. But for supposedly being a multi-millionaire, where are the fruits of Andrew's labor? Is the reason it is so obscured and unknown because it is something he doesn't want us to know? Something that he isn't proud of? Andrew had a lot of insightful things to say about masculinity. He very much believed in a warrior type of man that is capable of fighting for what he loves and giving his life up. It's no coincidence he eventually converted to Islam, which champions these masculine virtues. But a man ought to lead by example, and with masculinity and business especially, Andrew again seems to be saying one thing whilst doing another. There is an integrity in his actions. There doesn't seem to be a deeper thought behind how a man achieves something. For Andrew, a man having wealth, fame, and a nice car seemed to triumph in a virtue and integrity. And that's one of the biggest concerns about his message that repeatedly comes up, his emphasis on the material. So much of Andrew's online persona appeared to be just for show, that one begins to wonder how much of Andrew's character is for show and how much actual substance is there under the man that he claims to be. If one can isolate certain things that Andrew Tate has said, you can find insight and advice that can be helpful. But the issue is, how can we separate his words from the character that he portrays? It is difficult to not look at the man's life when you consider all the things he preaches, and to notice a discrepancy at times that can temper the good things he can sometimes say. Because for Andrew, the issue is seldom what he says, but most times it is how he says it that is harmful, that can warp an otherwise constructive message. He acknowledges how valuable wealth and women are to a man's life, but the way he frames it, that this is the ultimate goal to a man's life, instills within his followers a shallow mindset that only wishes to take but not give, wanting money without providing value, or wanting women without giving love. His message brought about a surge of materialism in men, aspiring to improve for all the wrong reasons. On one hand, he definitely pushed some men in the right direction with his calling to invest into fitness or wealth. But on the other hand, he sent a lot of men towards a shallow path of chasing money and women, simply for societal approval. For sure, both of these aspects are so closely linked together in his message, it is hard to untangle them, because ultimately we cannot ever be sure how virtuous Andrew's intentions were as a public figure. We can only judge the results of what he preached. And the results were manifold, both good and bad. Andrew Tate, at the height of his fame, was a man who preached his own flavor of masculinity, but also carried with it a certain plague that only modernity possesses. A plague that values flashy cars and models over an honest masculine life. The whole Red Pill movement he was associated with is scarcely representative of the true masculinity, because Andrew's message, much like other Red Pill influencers, lacks the inner peace and integrity that a true man would have. This is why he has been associated with such shady businesses, and had all these accusations laid at his door. Whether he's a criminal or not aside, it is difficult to call him a moral man, because a moral, an upright man, would want wealth to provide and care for his family, not to buy a flashy car. He'd want a woman because he wishes to care for her, to provide for her, not because he wants to masquerade her like a trophy. but Andrew seems to focus most of all on the material, because at the heart of Andrew's message, all the intricacies of true masculinity are lost. Thank you very much for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you're new here and you want to see more stuff like this. If you want to talk to like-minded people about meaningful topics and have actual discussion, be sure to join my Discord server, it is down below. I appreciate you for sticking around and I'll see you in the next one.